All right, so for our next project, we are taking an image online that we like the composition of, the arrangement of visual elements, and we're going to create our own version of it using shape tools within Photoshop. So the first thing to do is to do a Google image search, find an image you like. I'm actually going to use this opportunity, as I often do, to show off one of my favorite contemporary artists. His name's James Jean. He started as an illustrator for comic books, now does fine art exclusively, but he has a very good sense of color and composition. But unfortunately, a lot of his work, especially his more recent work, is just really complicated. And so I like to use him as an example to try to simplify it and get to the essence of what is really effective about it to me. And actually, I'll take something really complicated like this, maybe. Because his work seems to be really powerful, even when it doesn't have all that detail to rely on. So for this, you do not need to worry about the resolution of the image, because we're not going to be using that image in our final. We're just going to be using it as reference. Let's see. Yeah, I like this. Now you'll notice my aesthetic tastes are really on display here. I like kind of these floating forms in the middle of space. That's what most of my fine art is. I call them glumps. I'm just drawn to that. That was kind of what our cartoon jumble was like. So it makes sense for me to keep exploring that and try to figure out why. But you might like other kinds of composition. You likely do. Okay, now I have that on the desktop. Should have it on the desktop. Where'd it go? And again, the way we get an image from a Google image search is we right-click on it. He's done a lot of work. There it is. So we right-click on it, we open it in its own tab. Then you can say View Image, make sure that it shows up. This is only the size of it, but that will be enough. Then you drag and drop it to the desktop, and the reason you do that is to see if it actually goes over. If it doesn't, you can go to Save Image As, and you want to make sure it navigates to the desktop with Command D. It will show you if it's downloading. There it is. So that's why I like to drag and drop to the desktop, always see the desktop, and then hit F11 to see if it's actually there. Okay, now I can close my web browser, and I'm going to open this image up with Photoshop. Now, when we're finished with our image, we want it to print 8 by 10 inches minimum at least 350 pixels per inch. But if you go up to image and image size, you'll see that your images are probably not that. So this is only 72 pixels per inch, 8 by 12 inches, which means if I made it 350 pixels per inch, I'd only be able to print it 1.8 inches by 2.5 inches. So this is not high enough resolution for us. So we are going to change the resolution. And the problem with that is it's going to make this image a little blurrier, but it shows you how we can control the size of our pixel grid. And we're going to be building our shapes on top of this, so we want to make it into a file that's the right resolution. So to do that, I click on Resample. And Resample allows me to force it into as many pixels as I want it to be. So I'm going to grow this. And most of you will need to grow your image. And you see this little chain. You want that. So if it's not clicked, you want to click it. That makes it so when you grow it, it grows proportionally, so it doesn't distort. I want its width to be let's do 9 inches. And then the height's going to be 12 or more. If your image is wider than it is tall, you want its height to be 9 inches, and then its width to be 12 or more. And now the resolution. Because notice, my change didn't change it much. It just increased it by 0.04 megabytes. But when I change the resolution to our standard lab resolution for printing, which is 350 pixels per inch, it's going to change it a ton. So it was 1.6 megabytes, now it's 39 megabytes. So your image should be in the 30s or 40s when you're done. And you'll notice in the preview, it gets really blurry, and that's to be expected because we are inventing a bunch of pixels around the existing pixels, which blurs them out. So say OK. Now it's much bigger. You can see in the corner of the file, it's a much larger file size. We're viewing it at 100%, which means the pixels we're seeing are the pixels of our screen. And if we hit Command 0, it will fit it all back on our screen. But if we actually view it print size, or 100% rather, so we can see the pixels, we'll notice that if we printed this, it would really look fuzzy. Even though all the pixels are there, the pixels are being used to make something really blurry and fuzzy. So this is what's called upsampling. And in imaging, you don't want to ever grow an image that you intend to print, right? Because it will, no matter how high you make the resolution, it will still look low quality. All right, now that we've done that, I'm going to create a new layer, and I can do that by going up to Layer, New Layer. That's kind of the long-winded way. Or I can just use the layer window that we were playing with the cartoon jumble and click on the little post-it note symbol. And we'll create a new blank layer. With that layer selected, I'm going to go to Edit and fill it with white. White at a normal mode at 100%. And it looks like I just erased my whole image, but what I did instead is created a new layer with white. Now I'm going to double click on my background layer to unlock it and rename it Layer 0, say OK. What that does is it gets rid of the lock and it allows me to put the white layer behind my new layer. Why is that helpful? Well, now if I play with the opacity of my reference, I can kind of fade it out a little bit, make it useful that way. And I like to always have white underneath. Now I'm going to show you an alternate way we could have set this up, which hopefully you'll understand a little bit better now. So instead of opening up the image we got from online and then doing image size to make it big enough to print, we could also do this. We could go File, New, and create the file size we want. So if I call this Carl Exercise 2 Shape Composition, and then I want it to be 9 by 12 inches by 350 pixels per inch. RGB color, 8-bit, all that. Say OK. It will start with the white background. And then like we did with the cartoon jumble, just so you can see the differences, I can now take my low-res image, drag and drop it in, and as a smart object, it will automatically grow to fit that space. Does that make sense? So same thing, I hit return, and now it's already resampled. And so it's made with a lot more pixels than it was originally. And it's blurry, but now it's set up just like the other one. The only difference is I have these little extra edges on it that would be cropped later. So either of those ways work to set it up. The only difference is because I dragged and dropped it from the desktop, it comes in as a smart object. And if I try to edit it, like erase from it, which I don't want to do anyway, it will tell me it can't unless it's rasterized. If I wanted to repeat that quality over here, I can use the little lock feature to lock my reference layer so I can't accidentally edit it. All right, so both are acceptable. Now, I am going to build up on top of this layer with shapes. And just like when we were studying basic shapes early on and kind of tracing them over characters, I want to find the simplest, kind of biggest basic shape that works. So I see a big oval in here, right? A big blue oval. So I'm going to go down from all these selection tools we've been using, go down from the bottom basically, and above the magnifying glass, which we just use shortcuts for, Command plus, Command minus, the hand, which we can use a shortcut for too. So instead of using the hand, if you just hit spacebar when you're zoomed in, it will automatically make it the hand, and then you can click and move around when you're zoomed in. That's going to be helpful to you. Command 0 is a nice shortcut for fitting everything on the screen. So we don't really need these two at all. There's a sub feature to the hand that might be useful to you later, which is to rotate the image itself so that when you're drawing with the tablet, you can have a more comfortable curve. And then to undo that, you just click it, double click it on the tool. But we're going to go to the tool above that, which is the shape tool. And you'll see in that drawer you have a few different basic shapes. You have a rectangle, you have an ellipse. So the rectangle could also make squares. The ellipse tool could also make circles. All you do is hold down Shift while you're using it. You have a rounded rectangle tool because everyone likes rounded rectangles in the digital realm for apps and things, though it's not very useful to us here. And then we have the Polygon tool, which would be how you make triangles. Just to show you how to make a triangle, you click on the Polygon tool, and then up in the options, you say how many sides. So a triangle is 3 sides, so you type in 3 there, and then it will make triangles. Right. Okay, these shape tools, everything from the pen tool on down, are a little different than the other Photoshop tools. These are vector tools. So they are not plotting pixels. They are kind of making a cutout that you can grow and shrink, and it will always match the pixels of the format you've set up. So if I want a big basic shape oval, I'm going to use the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to drag and drop an oval. And this is very much like the cartoon tool. Now, how do I make that oval the right size, the right angle? I hit Command T, just like we did for our cartoon, and that's free transform. It allows me to rotate it. It allows me to stretch it, nip and tuck it. It allows me to place it exactly where I want, and then hit return, and I've got my shape. But this is not a regular layer. This is a shape layer. So like we have our smart layer here, which won't let us edit. You can see that little icon in the corner of the layer preview within the layer window. The shape layer is a vector shape, and it has a little square with little square anchors at the corners of it. That tells me that this has special properties as a shape path. So what's nice about that is all I need to do is double click on that little layer icon, and I can change the color of my shape path. I can select a color, from my options here. I like to use web colors sometimes because it just simplifies the process. Gives me fewer options to choose from. Or I can even go off of this color picker and just click a color from my reference image. But not all of these blues are the same. As you can see from where my cursor goes in the color picker as I move around the blue. But let's say I choose that color. Then I say OK. And now my shape has changed color. Now I'm going to use the shape tool again and do another oval, maybe over here. So I draw it. It's going to fill with the same color because that's the last one I used. Now I'm going to use the move tool, kind of move it into place. But notice what happens. It created its own layer. So the nice thing about vector tools is each time you use them, they will create their own layer.